Now we are going to solve this quadratic equation using completing the square method. We can as well use factorization method to solve something like this. Both methods can still be used to solve this kind of quadratic equation, because we can factorize these numbers. Looking at it now, we can factorize 92 factors of 90. That would be 9 and 10. That's in that aspect we can use factorization method to solve this quadratic equation. But we just decided to use completing the square method in order to solve something like this. And most of the time, the reason why we use completing the square method is when factorization method cannot be used to solve a quadratic equation. Most of the time we use completing the square method or the general formula to solve quadratic equation. So let's solve this one using completing the square method. So the first thing we are going to do is to add 90 to both sides. In order to get to start from there, we say add 90 to both sides, and that will be x squared minus x minus 90 plus 90 equals 0 plus 90. Now, in that regard, you did minus 90 plus 90 will give us 0. So 0 plus 90 will give us 90. So we have left x squared minus x equals 90. Now, after getting to this place, the next thing we are going to do is to add the coefficients, half of the coefficient of x here. I'm not talking of the coefficient of x squared. I'm talking of half of the coefficient of x. Squared it, then you add it to both sides. You add it to both sides. Half of the coefficient of x, you squared it, and you add it to both sides here. Now, if you look at this place now, what's our coefficient of x here? The coefficient of x here is 1. The coefficient of x here is 1. So, we're going to say half of 1 squared, we add it to these two sides. So, we are going to write add half of the coefficient of x, half of the coefficient of x, squared it, squared to both sides. So half of the coefficient of x, squared it, then you add it to both sides. In other words, we have x squared minus x. Then what is the half of 1 is 1. So we have plus 1 over 2, and I say you squared it, is equals to 90 plus 1 over 2 all squared again. Now, after doing that, then you find a way of factorizing this one in a simple manner, like just what I'm going to do now. Using this method I'm going to show you will make it easier for you to get it right. So you don't have to trouble yourself. So you just need to pick the value here, followed by the sign that is here. Then you have what is here. That's how you now squared everything both sides. So you take your x minus 1 over 2 all squared like this. So by the time you take that, you have squared it, then equals 90 plus 1 over 2 squared. So in that regard now, you write the value again, x minus 1 over 2 all squared is equals to 90 plus, what is 1 squared is 1. What is 2 squared is 4. As you can see now. So let's say this one is over 1. This is what we are left with now. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. Now, after doing this, let's do some mathematical calculations in this place to have one value. We have x squared, x minus 1 over 2 all squared equals, so 90 times 4, we have 360. 1 times 1 times 1 plus 1 all over 1 times 4, 4. And that will give us what? 361 all over 4. So we have x squared, x minus 1 over 2 all squared is equal to 361 over 4. So getting to this place now, how do we make this square root to disappear? What you need to do, you need to square both sides. Now, by the time you are squaring both sides, you are adding plus or minus to this side as well. So it will now be square root of x minus 1 over 2 all squared is equals to plus or minus square root of 361 all over 4. So let's clean this side so that we can have some space here. Let's clean this side. Now, what we are having left is, by the time this square now cancel this square root, we are having x minus 1 over 2. We have x minus 1 over 2 equals plus or minus, what is the square root of 361? That should be 19 all over square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Now, then what do you need to do? You add half to both sides. This is your 1 over 2, you add it to both sides, just like when we did to 90. It will now be x minus 1 over 2 plus 1 over 2 equals plus or minus plus or minus 19 over 2 plus 1 over 2. So I said add this one to both sides. Then after doing that, we discover that minus 1 over 2 plus 1 over 2 we cancel. Then we have x left to be equal to plus or minus 19 over 2 plus 1 over 2. Now you separate this because there are two things here together. You separate this and say that either x is equal to plus 19 over 2 plus 1 over 2, or x will be equal to minus 19 over 2 plus 1 over 2. So now, in this side now, we have the same denominator. Then, since we have the same denominator, we just subtract direct. Then we now choose our denominator. Plus 19 plus 1, that's plus 20. We have plus 20 all over 2, or minus 19 plus 1, that gives us minus 18. That's minus 18 all over 2. So that means x will be equal to 2 here 1, 2 here 10, 2 here 1, 2 here 9. X will be equal to 10, or x will be equal to minus 9. X will be equal to 10, or x will be equal to minus 9. Like I told you in the first place, the two factors that we can use to factorize the 90 is 9 and 10. So we can also use that factorization method to solve the equation in the first place. So let's go for the second example.